Hello, everyone. I'm Nina Collins. This is the recording of Raging Gracefully, which is the podcast for Revel, what we like to call the social platform for women over 40. And we're here today in conversation with Julie Lythcott-Haims, who is an author, an activist, a speaker. Julie's written three, maybe four books, definitely How to Raise an Adult, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, a really acclaimed memoir called Real American, a memoir, and then a book on writing, right? A book of writing excerpts or writing prompts. I didn't dig into that one.
Yeah, I just wrote the foreword to that one. It's called Lit Starts Writing Memoir, and it's my theory about why you write memoir with a whole lot of great, juicy writing prompts contributed by my former colleagues at the Writers Grotto in San Francisco.
Wow, I could use that. That's super cool. And you're a former Stanford dean, right? But your career, as I understand it, is really all about kind of authenticity. And I love, there's a line on your website that says, I'm on a journey out of fear toward love. So my first question for you, I want to talk about adulting and the whole idea of how you got into this. And presumably it's from your work at Stanford dealing with college students, but I'm interested in kind of, I don't know, your whole evolution of how you came to have this kind of awesome career. Because writing about authenticity is not something people can make a living at generally.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, be proud of yourself. It's impressive.
Yeah, my career makes sense when you look backwards at it, but I'm not sure if you were to start me out at 18 and say, how about you're going to do this, that, and the other? It would have looked, I think, insurmountable. I'm in my third career. I've been a lawyer. I've been a university dean. I now write about things and speak about them for a living. But my why around authenticity, I think goes all the way back to my origins. I am the Black biracial child of a Black man and a white woman who transgressed the rules of society when they dared to fall in love and marry and have a child. So I arrived in this world in 1967, gleaning from the looks on the faces of strangers and teachers and friends that my father was problematic and that I was probably problematic. And I think that has forced me into an awareness of myself vis-a-vis others, sooner maybe than some other people do. I know other people have had similar experiences that might have led to that. I'm just trying to point out mine.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting.
Yeah, I'm just deeply interested in, I guess what happened is I got the message early on that Black people were problematic. There are all these negative stereotypes. And I tried, in growing up in white spaces, I was the kid who learned to work hard not to be the stereotype. And when we're behaving in response to what we fear others think of us, we're really emanating from a place of self-loathing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as opposed to authenticity, right? So I think as I've done the psychological work to love, know, and accept this self that I inhabit, I've gotten really clear that who I authentically am is what matters. And so I try to adhere to that as a rudder in myself, but I'm also deeply interested in all of us accessing that truth of, who am I really? What do I really want? What is this life about for me? Not in response to the prejudice of others.
This is, for me, this stuff is so important and it's stuff I think about all the time. So I'm kind of envious and inspired that you've actually really, I've made a different career in different ways interesting, but I am very interested in exactly what you talk about. And I also am biracial and I was born in 1969. Did you grow up in the East Coast or the West Coast?
No way, Nina. We moved around a lot. My dad was in public health. I was born out of the country. We lived in New York. We lived in Wisconsin. We lived in Northern Virginia. I did high school back in Wisconsin, came out.
So that also probably played, or it's interesting because I'm always interested. Sure. We can have a whole conversation about the biracial stuff because I grew up with a Black mother and my father was white and they were divorced. So my mother raised us. But my father was around and I was close to his family too. And I wonder if partly because you moved around so much. And also I always wonder the dynamic, it's more common, your dynamic where the father is Black and the mother's white. And I do wonder what subtle effect that has because my mother was an activist and a filmmaker and she was complicated and my childhood was not easy and we didn't have any money, but I did not grow up feeling stigmatized by my color. And I don't know why.
God. First of all, thank you for making space for this conversation. I get to do a lot of podcasts and convos, but they rarely go right to where you've gone. So I appreciate it. We could obviously talk for days with one another, but we're going to try to make it minutes right now. My first thought is, yes, moving a lot contributed to my curiosity, to the necessity of continually knowing and therefore reinventing the self wherever I moved. It was an opportunity to re-examine. I think moving a lot afforded me that. It also came with a cost. I do think that I envy you for having a Black mother. I love my white mother. And yet I have longed to have had a female ancestor who was alive, who I could access to learn about this self and this body. And Lucille Clifton, a poet.
Yeah, amazing poet.
She became my literary Black mother when I discovered her in 2005. It was like, if she's possible, if her words are possible, maybe I am possible. And so I very much respect my white mother, but there were limits to what she could teach me. And she was a white person who was trying very hard to be a member of a Black family and really did the work and continues to. She's still alive, 83 years old. But I have wanted to take issue with my long deceased beloved father, Daddy, who really was the patriarch in a very traditionally gendered marriage they had. And he was the one making decisions about where we would live. My Black parent, I feel, should have known better than to raise me in predominantly white towns where I stuck out like a sore thumb. But Daddy died when I was 27, and I didn't come to this consciousness until my late 30s. So he hasn't been around for me to argue with.
Yeah, my mom died when I was 19, and I don't really talk to my father. So I also don't have those answers. And it's hard because the other thing that I wanted to talk about was this idea of coming into your authenticity and really focusing on what you want. And a couple things come to mind: being accused of being selfish, which is something I struggle with sometimes. And I feel very much like one thing women don't do that well or don't do well enough is really identify what they want, because I think what you want is very closely related to kind of who you are and how you want to live. And that we shouldn't be ashamed to identify what we want and say it. So that's something that kind of interests me. And then I also wonder if you feel like it's gotten easier to access your authentic self as you've gotten older. And do you think that that's, I mean, you say when your father died when you were 27, you weren't near this conversation. And now you're 53, I guess. 54.
Yeah.
So do you feel like becoming authentic is a part of getting older?
Well, 100%. The first thing that I want to say, though, is, of course, as women, we are typically socialized to please others and to downplay our own needs. Obviously, there's a very meta narrative around that. I will say within that context, I tend to identify fairly atypically within femaleness. I do identify as female and she, her, but I've been told that I'm very masculine or very non-traditional. I had the full-time breadwinning job in my marriage. My husband stayed home with the kids from the beginning, part-time. And so my choices and around relationship and around profession and child rearing have not been typical. I've been very fortunate to have my husband and mother very involved in raising our children so that I could have that full-time career that was not accessible to many women. I want to just note that I am, though, a people pleaser and really have spent a lot of time apologizing for myself. I'm that sort of person who's always going to say, oh, sorry, but, oh, sorry, right? And I've been given feedback recently that I'm apologizing for taking up space. And of course, I know why that's there. As a Black kid who was assertive, confident, trying to, smart, hardworking, whatever, I was constantly told I was either ignored or told I was too much. And so,
I was told that too a lot, but you have to not apologize. Part of accessing your authentic self, right, is
right. So you asked if that came with age, and I think the answer is yes, for a couple of reasons. One is we do know ourselves better over time, or we certainly can if we do the work. But second, the more we age, the larger our network is, the more work experience we've had. So we don't have to be as apologetic because we now have a lot of evidence and track record and, community and people around us, so that, we're no longer striving to just be relevant or to
be understood and to be relevant. That's so interesting.
As we did when we were 22 and in our first job out of college, if we went to college.
Yep. Wow. You're awesome. I'm so inspired by you. Okay. So next question is, when did you really feel like you were an adult? So I want to segue into these books you've written and why you wrote them. And because I have my own thoughts, like, I don't think I really became an adult until my 40s. And
Right.
I'm curious about for you.
Well, it does beg the question, what is an adult? Let me say one thing before I answer it. I want everybody listening to take notice of what's coming up for you as Nina and I speak, because you're having a physiological bodily response. We're saying stuff that's pushing a button in a good way or a bad way, and that's relevant. That's you telling you this matters to me. So to everybody watching, be mindful, take note. It matters how you're.
I love that. I want to zoom in on that for a second. So to kind of I hadn't really thought about that, like thinking every day what really resonates with you and actually paying attention to it as a key to your authenticity. That's a very good point that I had never really just articulated.
I mean, the body gives us clues before the mind can label it as a feeling. The body will tell you, I'm afraid, I'm uncomfortable, I'm angry, I'm worried, I'm excited. And so those bodily clues, and this as a memoirist, I'm always trying to tap into what has my body done in the moment. It's one of the best ways to describe on the page what's going on so that readers can relate. So I'm very interested in reporting from the body, as my memoir mentor, Faith Adiele, taught me. But now I'm 54, so I can't remember the question you.
That's okay. The question is, when did you, let's
Oh,
define
right.
what being an adult is, and when did you become one?
So I will say I do say in this book, Your Turn, that adulting or being an adult isn't a point of arrival. It's a way of showing up in the world. And so I think we do have the moments, the early moments when we recognize, oh, I'm an adult, but it doesn't mean we've arrived and we're done growing in that identity. It's just demarcating the difference between, oh, I'm not a caretaken child anymore. I'm now responsible for myself. That's the basic difference. In childhood, if you've got a decent parent or two, you're in their care. They are tasked with looking after you, feeding you, being responsible, keeping you safe. In adulthood, you are your own responsibility, more or less, which doesn't mean you go it alone. We're always in community with others, right? But you're more or less, you wake up knowing it's on me, all right? My first moment at identifying the book, I was 20, I just graduated from Harvard Law School. I'm married for 2 years now. And now Dan and I have been married almost 30 years. We're moving from Massachusetts back to California for me to be a lawyer at a law firm. We're staying with my parents who are in Massachusetts just while our belongings travel across the country in a moving van. And I get a call. I must be 26. I get a call from the moving company informing me that our moving van, which is one of these enormous Beacons van lines that has 5 families stuff in it, including our everything except for 2 suitcases, the van caught on fire.
Oh.
I get a phone call informing me of this problem, letting me know that we don't know how bad the damage is. They say we won't know until we unload it all at a warehouse in Oakland. We'll let you know when you can come see it. And I am in my parents' house with my relatively new husband. My mother is putting dinner on the table as I get this call. I swallow, take a deep breath, turn around to them, inform them. And I can feel in that moment, like, I want to show, like, for a brief second, I was like, I want daddy to take care of this, but I didn't let that thought take over. Instead, I steeled my face and I signaled, like, this is some shit, but it's our shit and we're going to handle it. And Dan came over to me and he put his hands on my shoulders and we looked at each other like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. And my parents were wonderful. They said, oh no, my gosh, how we've moved so many times over the years. This has never happened. Oh, love, we're so sorry. But they never said, we'll handle it for you. They never said, we'll fly out there. They signaled that they knew we were adults. And in some ways, the evidence does come from our elders.
Yeah, it comes from
their lack of jumping in, signal to us, you've got this. I believe in you. And you know what? As awful and scary as the news was, we didn't yet know how bad it would be. It felt good to know, like, this is our problem and we're going to handle it.
Yeah. Well, and you also were lucky in that you had a good partner. It sounds like you've stayed together forever, right? So that's good. So there was a good pairing there to face the world.
Right.
Really interesting. Because I think, I really do think for me, it wasn't until after I got divorced from the father of my 4, I seemed very adult early. I started a business when I was 23 and I had 4 kids and then another business and I was married and we had all these, big house and dogs. But I think emotionally I was, stunted from the death of my mother and not having adults around me to help guide me. So I felt very lost and very scared. Actually, it brings me back to fear, to your quote on your website, I'm on a journey of fear toward love. I think I really operated out of fear for a long, long time, and, put on a good face and was angry and all the things that you do to kind of cover up fear.
Yeah.
And I don't think I do that anymore, thank God. But it took me probably till I was like 45, which is sad. And now I have 4 kids. How old are your kids?
22 and 20. How old are yours?
Yeah, mine are similar. Mine are 21, 23, 23, and 28. And they're all in this process of really becoming full adults and, and doing a very good job of it. And it's interesting for me because I didn't have a parent in those years. And so now I'm being a parent to kids that age and trying to figure out the separation. So what made you write these 2 books? What was the impetus for the adulting books?
Well, you kind of alluded to it when you first brought them up. I was the dean of freshman and undergraduate advising up the road from me, Stanford University, for 10 years, more or less in the same role for 10 years. And from that vantage, where one of your dogs, where my job was to give a damn about my students, and I did, I observed changes in modern parenting that were becoming evident at the university level in the late 90s, frankly. We began seeing parents showing up or on the phone or by email wanting to ask a question, solve a problem, do something that we really thought was the purview of their student. That is to say, prior to then, students had been capable of registering themselves for class, talking to a professor about a grade they didn't like, dealing with a roommate problem, making an appointment for this or that, paying attention to an overseas studies seminar. We had parents showing up and wanting to kind of jettison their kid from the driver's seat and put their kid in the car seat while they steered them through. And I was like, wait a minute, this is college.
Crazy. Like, can you imagine when we were in college, if our parents had ever called?
Very not Gen X. We couldn't get our parents to care. And now we had boomer parents over caring for their millennial children in ways that, of course, have turned out to be really enabling and harmful. But I'm not a psychologist. I couldn't spot it immediately, but I am a lawyer. So I do like to think critically. And I was watching, and by the way, this is not a Stanford problem. Let me just be clear. Sometimes people think I'm knocking I love Stanford. I went there, I worked there. I was a dean on a campus when every dean on every campus was seeing the same results of childhood having changed. Okay. So I had all this empathy for young adults, and also why aren't the young adults concerned? Why are they I've got a parent or two who's helping me through. I was like, where is your rebellion? Why aren't you
your sense of autonomy?
Right? And so I said, oh shit, what's to become of that student if they don't develop that? What's to become of society if we have a whole heck of a lot of folks who just like to be sort of handled through life? That can't be good, was my hunch. Well, sure enough, psychologists have now done studies that correlate this kind of over encroaching parenting style, handling, fixing, managing, just smooth it, soothe it, with higher rates of anxiety and depression and less executive function in kids and young adults, because we're depriving our kids of agency and resilience when we overhelp. So look, my empathy for humans, specifically young humans becoming their adult selves, launching out into this terrifying world called adult life. My empathy for them is what led me to write what looks like a book on parenting, my first book, How to Raise an Adult, but I'm not a parenting expert. I just had a lot of compassion for kids and had to figure out by reading other people's research how to connect the dots around a problem and give parents advice about how to course correct. It's my third book, but the response, the sequel is specifically for young adults.
Hold it up. Your turn.
Your turn. How to be an adult. This is, it's for young adults, but older people, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s have said, I devoured it. I feel like you wrote it for me. And I'm like, that's awesome. And I think that's because adulting is, as I've said, simply no longer a child. It's this set of decades, we hope.
I think so too. I think even though you were very lucky at 26 and it is 27, it shows good parenting and a good partner choice. I don't think it's that uncommon, like me, to feel like you really don't become an adult until later. There's so much that goes into being an emotionally boundaried, balanced person.
Agreed. Agreed, 100%. And this book is full of stories of people from myriad walks of life. It's racially diverse, genderly diverse, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, religion, mental health situation, immigrant, I mean, it's just, I put in profiles of humans from so many walks of life to try to imagine every reader, which is something many nonfiction writers, dare I say almost all, fail to do. They write for the, straight white folks, middle-class folks. And I have not done that in this book because I want everyone to know that they matter, which is sort of a hidden message of this book.
Good for you. And how has all this affected your own parenting? Because presumably you
Oh,
started at Stanford when your kids were little, I would guess.
my God. Look, I just gave my latest talk on how to raise an adult last night. I was in LA in a consortium of 11 independent schools, 700 parents on the call. And I've revised the talk. I revise it every time I give it. But my narrative is, look, I was a dean calling it out with other people's parent, like calling out the behavior of parents who are overly involved at the college level. But then after 7 years of that, I come home and I'm cutting Sawyer's meat. My now 22-year-old, when he was 10, I was just cutting his meat at dinner. And I realized, oh shit, I'm one of those parents. How did that happen? And it made me less critical and more curious, but still vociferous, because I knew I could see how infantilized college students were not faring well. I did not want to be replicating that in my own home, and yet I was. So became very curious about the problem. So I have that dual advantage.
Well, it's complicated. Of course, we parent often in the way we were parented. So it's not just about society and the shifts in society. It's also coming from within and what we want to correct. And but I have made this year, 2022, the year that I feel like my boundaries have gotten a lot better with my kids in the last 5 years. But this year I've decided I want to start calling them less. Like, not that I love them and I want to hear from them, but I think we have, group text chats. I'm always reaching out. I'm sending articles. And it's like, maybe I should just be a little less involved, you know?
Yeah, I think that's beautiful self-reflection. And here's the point. Love is essential, but people need space also. And our kids should not be made to feel like our lives depend on how frequently they interact with us. And sometimes our need for connection can be suffocating for our kids who are trying to develop their own primary partnership or their own friendships and relationships and so on. So we do, with humility, we need to sort of like,
no, it's really true. And I consider myself someone who's really good at having her own life. And like, I love being in the empty nest. I love my apartment alone, but I do find myself, I'll be driving and I reach out to them and I'm looking for them to fill some sort of need. And like, I need to stop.
So I just did a podcast with my 22-year-old son, where it's sponsored by the org through which we get family therapy, and he has individual therapy. His journey has been a tough one around anxiety and ADHD. And as parents, we've kind of over accommodated and been gentle and like trying to walk on eggshells around his sensitivities, which we've learned from research out of Yale. This over accommodation foments anxiety because
you were just talking about that.
That's so afraid, like, don't worry, it'll never happen. We'll make sure, like, we'll be on alert to make sure. And that ends up turning the fear into a full-blown anxiety. So we're what I call actively repatterning our way of being with this kid and with our younger one, to try to be that healthy, to try to achieve that healthy psychological distance. So instead of like pushing our kids from behind, like, don't forget, you got to do this, or dragging them from the front, like, come on, this is what I think you should do. We're trying to stand untethered, but just nearby, respectful that they're their own unique individual, conveying, I love you, I see you, I'm always here. Let me know if you need me, but I think you've got this. That's the problem of modern parenting. I'm always here. I'll reach out. I'll handle. Don't forget. That signals to their brain, my mother doesn't think I can.
Right.
It's loving. Instead, it's this massive undermining. It's like, you can't be successful without me, but don't worry, I'm here. Like, what the hell? Why are we?
No, it makes 100% sense. All right, I don't want to keep you for too much longer because you're a very busy woman, but my next question then, it kind of leads me to more of a personal question for you, is as you get older at 54 and your kids are 20 something and you have to be less involved, how do you manage that? Where do you put your energy? What are you looking for next?
Oh, well, we've already talked about my amazing partner, Dan, and Dan and I look for every opportunity to hang with each other.
Oh, that's so
And
nice. I'm really curious. Is Dan white, black, biracial?
yeah, Dan is a white Jewish guy.
Nice.
And
My boyfriend's a white Jewish guy too.
okay, I say in my memoir, because I was really after the white gaze when I was young, because I was raised around only white people and just wanted to please white people and have them not call me the N-word again. I was really like, how can I, it's sort of inevitable that I ended up with a white guy. I happen to love this man, but I think had I been a person of this consciousness, when I was choosing my partner, I might just as easily, my life would have been full of people of color by that point, and maybe I would have ended up with somebody of color. But
yeah, no, I get that. I get that. But also Jewish men tend to be good husbands for what it's worth.
Okay. So what is next? Look, I'm trying to learn and grow until I take my last breath. Mm-hmm. Just as I don't think I've arrived and I'm not an adult, period. Like I'm in an adult mindset, which is learn and grow, keep going, figure out what's, the next learning edge for myself. I'm, developing a course for TED on my new book, Your Turn. I've been invited to do that. I'm super excited to turn the content into digestible video online learning.
Very cool.
I got another book in me, maybe 3 more books in me. Who knows? I love writing books.
What's your next book?
A mother-daughter memoir written about my mother's choice and our choice to open our purses and pocketbooks and share them and buy one house together in Palo Alto for the air quotes best public schools. So my husband, mom, and I became co-owners of a house, this house, 20 years ago. And it's been full of amazing upsides. And it's also been hell. My mother-daughter relationship, hers with me, me with her, has been fraught. And I found it almost untenable at times to be a mother, a wife, a person, and a daughter of this woman at the same dining
time. That sounds like hell to me, honestly. That sounds
well, but it was also like, how do you complain when someone's like giving free childcare and
right? No, I didn't have a mother. I would have right. The childcare seems awesome, and the family values. I get it. That sounds super complicated.
So we've worked that shit out largely, and we're going to write a book about it to be of service. I believe you write memoir to be of service to others, and that's what I hope the next book will be.
Memoir is my favorite genre. So, okay, you're like definitely one of my new heroes. I'm very glad to be you. We're on the list together, so I see your posts and
absolutely.
But I really like your writing. And all right, so everyone, this is Julie Lythcott-Haims. She's written 4 books. You can find her TED Talks. You have a newsletter that you send out. I
do. I'm just like showing my books. Here they are.
They're all her fabulous books.
My book on race.
Oh, and that cute picture of you on the cover is beautiful.
I call it my Frederick Douglass face. Look how mad I am.
So cute. And wait, your 2 children are boys, right? You don't have a daughter.
I have a boy and a girl.
Oh, you have a boy and a girl. So you're dealing with the mother-daughter thing in both ways.
Yes, absolutely. My house has been a laboratory where I can say, I just felt that way as the daughter of this mother. Now, when I enter this room where I'm the mother, how can I behave in ways so my own daughter isn't as upset as I just was in the other room?
Yeah.
So
and then I think you need to write a book. Once you've figured it out, you should write a book on parenting kids in their 20s, because it's a whole new challenge.
Well, I think we have to get away from that, actually. I mean, they could be in the Marines. So do we really want to call it parenting? How about we call it, I've got, my children are grown and I am still trying to figure out how to be of use to them and be what they deserve.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. You should write an essay on that. It's a good subject.
Thank you.
Really, really think you're great. This was super fun. Thank you to everyone listening. And this will go out as our podcast on next Friday, I believe. And I'll stay in touch with you and hope to meet you one day in person. Yeah, you too.
Thanks to everyone who listened. Really appreciate you.
Take care, Julie.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.